Welcome, race fans, to the Irish Hills area of Michigan, home of the Michigan International Raceway and the scene of Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s last victory. But last weekend it was the 14, owned by Tony Stewart and driven by the smoke, that made its way into victory lane to hold on to the points lead. So many stories to follow this weekend here from Michigan. We're glad you're with us on a beautiful day for racing. Great race fans here in Michigan. Let's show you what's on the menu. Coming up today, we got a lot of racing action on this track between the Camping World Truck Series and the Sprint Cup Series. Practice now. NASCAR Live final practice qualifying at 3 o'clock, but we're not done. Not by a long shot. After that, we have ARCA Racing, trackside in Michigan, performance in NASCAR Smarts. But right now to Steve Burns for Cup practice.
It is a spectacular morning here in Brooklyn, Michigan, the Irish Hills. We are 72 miles from Detroit, southwest of that big city. NASCAR Sprint Cup practice is underway here, just underway at the 2-mile Michigan International Speedway. Let's take a look at your championship point standings as we head into race number 15 of this 2009 season. Tony Stewart has a 71-point lead over Jeff Gordon. See the difference? 364 between first and 12th, and drivers just outside the top 12 as well. And glad you're with us, Steve Burns, Larry McReynolds, and Jeff Hammond. And Jeff, I said that we're near Detroit, 72 miles away. Well, it's known as Hockey Town. Tonight, the Detroit Red Wings will try to win their 12th Stanley Cup title, but it's also known and has been known for a long time as Motor City. It has been, Steve. I mean, we've been ready to run our 80th race here at Michigan. And the key thing is right down the road here, you talked about it, Detroit, a lot of the manufacturers, Chevrolet, Ford, Dodge, and even I think a little bit of Toyota folks hanging around down there in Detroit thinking, I would like to be the one that walks out here with the championship as far as the trophy is concerned this weekend. They would love to do it for their employees. I think it'd be a great shot in the arm as far as these car manufacturers are concerned. So a lot of pride on the line, I think, here. Every time you come up to Detroit, that's the way it works out. Guys like Jack Roush have won 5 out of 9 races. Ford's real happy about that. Larry, I think you've told me a story one time when you won with Ford. There was Ansel Ford, the third or what it was. He was standing in victory lane with his arm around doing like that. It's like, this is a pretty cool picture. It is. So it's really important right now, I think, for the guys to try to get these wins here for these manufacturers to help these different employees out. Larry, let's talk about the agenda here. We've got a 90-minute practice. We qualify later this afternoon. Let's talk about this practice.
Well, the weather forecast is great. Yeah, we had a lot of rain yesterday, but the forecast looks great for today. It looks good for in the morning when they have those 2 practice sessions. It's good on Sunday. I think what you're going to see a lot of these teams, you can only make so many practice qualifying runs because you need to do it on fresh tires. Honestly, Steve, there are some teams like this 14 car of Tony Stewart, his teammate Ryan Newman, Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon. You saw the points where they're up there in the top 4. They're starting to think about the chase. So this is a good opportunity maybe in the first 45 minutes of this practice session just to try some things, test some things, take the information back to the shop, back to the engineers, and it may be something they work on for the future, maybe those 10 chase races.
90 minutes to get dialed in for qualifying later this afternoon as we take a look at Joey Logano for Joe Gibbs Racing in the Home Depot Toyota.
Steve, I want to back up just a second. Larry talking about the chase and these guys testing. Let's remember one thing. With Tony Stewart winning that race last week, even though he's leading the points at this point in time, he would still not be our chase leader if it ended today. Believe it or not, we're still looking at Kyle Busch. He would go in there with the bonus points, followed by Jimmy Johnson, Matt Kenseth, and Mark Martin. Tony would be 5th in line. So I think a lot of these teams like Tony, now that you got one under your belt, you got to start thinking also about, can I get some more? Because we saw last year, one race into that chase, it helped Kyle Busch a lot. He had a bad race, the first race out of the box, kind of kept him up in the hunt. So I think making use of some bonus points right here has got to be on their agenda also.
No question. I think that was on Darian Grubb's mind last week when he was rolling the dice. Now, watching Joey Logano, this will be his first Sprint Cup Series start here. He does have a Nationwide Series start. And speaking of the Nationwide Series, it was this weekend a year ago that he won his very first career Nationwide Series race. I think since he is the defending champion, he's going to be doing double duty this weekend. He'll be going down there, and he's going to try to make all the practice sessions and both qualifying sessions at both racetracks. But the biggest thing about this 20 car, even though he finished 23rd at Pocono, he actually won the race on Saturday up there. The last 7 Cup races, he's finished on the lead lap in every one of those races. That's what he has to do as a rookie.
Do you hear the word experience starting to come about as far as Joey Logano is concerned?
Getting that seat time.
Getting that seat time.
Denny Hamlin had mechanical problems right from the green flag at Pocono last week.
I'm telling you, my heart, went out to him and that entire team. There could not have been a worse feeling than to see him have that kind of a problem right on the get-go. And what made it worse was, it really had him baffled for quite a while. It was one of those kind of situations that, what do you do? What do you do about fixing something like that?
Well, it's not the first time he's had fuel pressure issues, but the problem was different from what they've had in the past. They run that cable-driven fuel pump back there at the fuel cell. These cars don't have the mechanical fuel pumps. And actually, in the past, they've actually twisted or broke the cable that drives that fuel pump. But what happened this time, the fuel pump actually locked up, and that's what pretty much tore the main cable. Well, they came into the garage area the first time, they replaced the fuel pump, they replaced the long cable that goes to the engine, but inside the bell housing is another very short cable that actually is turned off the camshaft. They didn't replace that cable to the second trip, so that's the reason they had to make 2 trips to the garage area.
Excruciating. Uh-oh.
See
Michigan strike.
Yes, sir. The 00 of David Rudiman in the garage. He has, in fact, picked up a Michigan stripe.
You know what? I talked to David this morning on the way up here to the booth. I said, David, you having fun? Man, he said, this year has just been unbelievable. It really has been. I bet he's not having too much fun right now if he got that close to that wall.
Ma, I'm looking at the score monitor. I believe he did this right out of the garage area onto the racetrack. I don't even see where he completed a lap.
I know he's not happy now.
Stay with us here in Michigan on Speed. Back at the Michigan International Speedway, there's Kyle Busch in the 18 car right now. 9th fastest overall. 40 drivers have been on the track for practice. We have 44 entered. You'll see qualifying later today here on Speed.
We talked about his teammate Joey Logano doing double duty. Kyle Busch is going to do triple duty at 2 different racetracks. He's racing here, of course, in Sprint Cup, the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series on Speed tomorrow afternoon, and he's going to be making the trip down to Kentucky as well. So 3 races, 2 different racetracks.
Need to mention, too, there's an ARCA REMAX Series race here at Michigan later today. You'll see that.
Is he running that?
Why not? Why wouldn't he?
He's got to take time to eat his Wheaties every now and then, guys.
Complete the cycle.
Yeah, eat some M&Ms or something. It's really strange about this guy, Larry. He's either winning the race, or he's definitely had trouble this year. Again, recently, when you think about the fact he's finished outside the top 10 and 7 of the last 9 races.
Yeah.
It's pretty unbelievable. He's got 3 wins, but it seems like he's a defeated man.
Kyle finished 2nd here in August. A year ago, finished 13th in the June race.
But I think the most amazing thing, I think we talked about this a little bit at Pocono last week, in Sprint Cup alone, he's led 789 laps, but in all 3 of these series, he's led 2,451 laps, right at the 3rd mark of the season.
Let's go down into the garage and catch up with Matt Yoakum.
Steve, the Big Red Machine for the 2nd straight week. Tony Stewart, the 14 guys rolling to a racetrack. The championship point leader. Larry Mack touched on it, and Hammond touched on it as well. The goal now that you've gone to victory lane, not only to non-points, but a points-paying race. Now you're looking ahead to the chase. You're looking ahead to those bonus points. That's the agenda for the summer. Maintain and even improve on what they've built, but also looking ahead to the chase and put this team in a better position. They come in here looking for their 2nd win. Stewart early on in the session says the car free. They made an adjustment in the back end of the race car. He's gone back out. He's in race trim, Steve.
Thank you, Matt. Larry Mack, I just got the note. The note you talked about in practice last week at Pocono.
And it's different from last week now that he won the race.
We said back then when he tore up his race car that 3 drivers have won a race from the rear of the field in 2009. And Larry Mack said, and Tony Stewart is hoping that he will be the 4th.
And he is.
And I just got the note.
You were hoping you'd get a note from
Russell Winrick.
Exactly right. And Russell, you were a little bit slow this morning, son. You got to pick it up a little bit.
No, he had already prepared.
He already prepared.
I
were getting it out there.
Well, I was
okay.
waiting for Matt.
Oh,
Absolutely.
man. All right, okay. Timing is everything.
Tony Stewart's teammate Ryan Newman with the U.S. Army colors back on board that Chevrolet this week.
I'll tell you what, this group here, they get the attaboy for Pocono last week. You know, certainly being at a 2.5-mile racetrack helped the cause, but I talked to Tony Gibson middle of the week when they had that caution right about lap 103. You know, we had not had a caution for almost 80-something laps, and the car was all but running on 7 cylinders, but Ryan told Tony it wasn't consistent. It was like surging. On that caution, what they determined what exactly it was. It was not a spark plug wire. It was not the carburetor. They determined it was a bad spark plug, but they didn't have time to change it. Fortunately, 5 laps later, on the next to the last caution of the race, they got a chance to change that spark plug and came back and rallied to finish in the top 5.
He's got more top 5s this year than they had all of last year. So big turnaround for the Ryan Newman.
Ryan Newman 6th on the timing and scoring monitor. Tony Gibson watches atop the transporter. Mark Martin and Mark Truex Jr. the quickest here in practice. As we watch Greg Biffle, a 2-time winner motor on at practice here, we'll remind you that Jeff Burton joins us for trackside tonight. Don't miss NASCAR trackside for Michigan, 8 Eastern, NASCAR on Speed. Be there.
You know, Greg Biffle and Greg Irwin, they actually had the highest finishing car last week at Pocono that had to make a late race green flag pit stop. They finished just outside the top 10. They led some laps, ended up finishing 11th.
Greg won here August of 2004, then June of 2005. Finished 4th here in August and 20th last June.
One of my co-hosts, Doug Richard on NASCAR Performance, was his crew chief back in 2005 when he won one of those races here.
Let's go down to the garage and meet Mr. Marty Snyder this morning.
How you doing, gentlemen? I have found a guy who's not very happy. An eventful half lap for you, David Rudman. What happened?
I don't really know. We it's getting down into one. Car drove in, and I think we might have missed a little something there, and the splitter just drug really bad, and it just wouldn't turn. Really wasn't going all that fast, so just actually getting up to speed, and it's a good thing we weren't going all that fast because the damage could have been a whole lot worse. But my guys will get it fixed. I think we'll still have a good airstream machine. We didn't hit it that hard, but certainly not the way you want to start off practice. And at least you like to make a lap before you do something like that, but just that worked out for us.
The good thing is, I think Rodney has assessed everything. Your crew chief, Rodney Childress, he seems to think everything's okay, right?
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but they'll go back. We'll get it raised up off the racetrack a little bit so it doesn't drag, and we'll go back at it.
All right, I think David had a little time to cool off, a little upset there with how things started in practice, but I think they'll get the car back going here in short order.
Well, I think with 12 races to go until the chase, as we watch David Strimmy in the 12 car, remember David Rudeman, after finishing 3rd at Pocono last week, he's back in the top 12 in points.
Like I said, he was having a lot of fun earlier this morning doing some media stuff. But now, like I say, go back to work, roll your sleeves up and get it done. Here's a guy that's been kind of like getting things together here lately, Larry.
They just absolutely have no luck.
But can't quite put a period on it. Run well, but can't quite put the period on it.
David Stremme heads to the garage, 15th fastest in his Dodge. So we'll take a look at Brian Vickers. This has been a good racetrack for Vickers.
It has been, and from what I understand, it looks like he's going to get him a contract extension right there with Red Bull. Got to be exciting for that group over there. They're trying to put things together. Saw this car. Didn't get a chance to hear the whole story about it, but I saw that they were up in New York City the other day changing tires at a pit stop right there in the middle of is it Park Avenue?
Right in Times Square, 7th Avenue and Times Square. Pretty good deal right there for that team. Had a lot of people standing around watching, I can tell you that. It didn't take very long for them to get it done. But Steve, going back to the championship point standings at the top of the show, this is one of the teams they're gonna have to get in gear. Yeah, they're only 143 points out of the top 12, which when you look at 12 races, including this weekend, that's not a lot of points. But the problem becomes how many teams are between you in the top 12, more so than the points.
Brian Vickers has 3 straight finishes of 8th or better here at Michigan. He's led laps in each of those events. Let's go back to Marty.
Kyle Busch has pulled into the garage after his first run. You guys, I mentioned his schedule this weekend. We'll get to that in a second. Very pleased with the car. They're going to make one minor change here. Kyle thinks they have certainly something to work with. They are in race mode right now for Kyle Busch. His weekend, as you guys talked about, he will have the Craftsman, the Truck Series race tomorrow, and the nationwide race after that, and then the Cup race on Sunday, and then Monday and Tuesday he goes to Indianapolis to do tire testing for Goodyear. So he has got a busy couple of days coming up, flying back and forth from here to Kentucky. He will leave right after qualifying today for a practice session there, and then right after the Truck Series race, out of here back to Kentucky again to run the nationwide race tomorrow night. So a busy weekend for Mr. Kyle Busch. But what, this is normal, right, guys?
Pretty much.
It's the way he likes it.
That's it. Wouldn't have it no other way.
Sounds to me like Larry McCrummel's schedule.
But you know, it's interesting. He's going to Indy to tire test. You've got to give a thumbs up to Goodyear about this Indianapolis deal. We know what the debacle we had there last August. That's probably going to be about 6 or 7 tests that they've done there. I talked to David Hyder, crew chief of Bill Elliott, this morning. They were there right after Dover. He said, Larry, we've got a tire we can race on now. I think they just want to go back one more time next week just to give it an absolute confirmation.
Well, the thing about it right now, Larry, if something goes wrong up there, it's not because they didn't try. They brought everybody they could up there. I think every one of these drivers has been up there in some kind of test session with, you know, a teammate or something has been up there. And again, they've gotten better and better and better. And you got to give them credit. When they have a problem, they get to the bottom of it.
Well, millions of dollars, not thousands,
no,
millions of dollars trying to solve this tire issue at Indy.
We saw David Stremme a moment ago. There's his teammate Sam Hornish Jr. completing his 11th lap. He's 36 of 42 drivers who have practiced here this morning at Michigan International. Stay with us. Glad you're back with us here at Michigan International Speedway. Carl Edwards won here in August. Right now, 21st overall. Timing and scoring charts. Jeff Hammond, you used to work at Roush Fenway Racing. 19 total wins here for that team, 11 in the Sprint Cup Series. What do we attribute that to?
The fact that his main office is right down the road there. Because when I worked for Junior Johnson, if you didn't win at North Wilkesboro, things were not very good. Miss Flossie and Junior come down and tell you, boys, we got to win in our own backyard. And I think Jack puts a little extra effort in there. The drivers understand how important it is. We talked about the manufacturer's role here. They know how important it is to the folks at Ford to get wins here. So I think they put a little extra effort into it when they come up here. But right quick, guys, I want to go back to last week. Pocono, Tony Stewart won that race on fuel mileage. This guy finished second to him, and I just had to know. So I went down and asked Pierre Cattell, car chief on this number 99, how much fuel did you have? He said, enough to get by, but not enough to win. I said, does that make you feel okay? He said, yeah. He said, man, we thought we could have run him down, but if we'd have tried to run him down, we'd have probably run out coming off of turn 3 and would have been like Jimmy Johnson. We'd have lost a lot more. But, you know, I thought you got to take your hats off to all those crew chiefs that figured that fuel, because I was listening to you last week on the broadcast, and they had you scratching your head right there. How are they going to do it?
That 10 miles is a lot to make up. I think we have a second victim of the Michigan right side stripe. Casey Mears, this 07 car. When he went by us last time, you can see he's got a little stripe. I was trying to see where Casey's actually at on the practice chart. Actually, this is his first time out. Yep. So you almost wonder if he fell victim to the same thing as David Ruderman.
Well, Larry, we've talked about this, I mean, all year long. What these drivers do when they roll off a pit road anymore is they take basically what the guys have done at the shop, and they believe the car is perfect. So when they go out into that pit road, they're catching gears, and by the time they get to the back straightaway before they complete one lap, it's 180 miles an hour then into turn 3. If the splitter hits, well, guess what? It's too late. Nobody can do anything about it but hang on and hopefully keep it out of the safer barrier. And it looks like what happened to Casey, probably the same thing that happened to David Ruderman.
Well, as Larry said, that was his first official lap on the track. Just 40th quickest for Casey Mears. Getting word that he hit the wall at 11:35 this morning as practice started just after 11:30.
So he must have done it just like David Ruderman. Pretty much first lap on the track, didn't even complete a lap.
Marty.
Your guys' assessment is exactly right. He did not finish the lap in 1 and 2, hit the splitter, hit the wall, and that was it.
You see the damage right there. Not a lot of damage, but yet it will get your attention as a driver. I mean, that's something you're not expecting. And again, what David Ruderman said, I'm sure if you ask Casey, same thing. When that splitter hits the racetrack, you got no control of that race car.
Well, Jeff, Larry, you know, this track almost lulls you to sleep. It's a big, wide, sweeping track. There's lots of room to race as we watch Jimmie Johnson. But right now, the quickest lap, 186.55 miles per hour, 38.59 seconds. That's the lap turned in by Mark Martin. That's a lot of speed.
Well, and when we qualify this afternoon, Steve, you're going to see speeds well over 200 miles an hour getting off in the corner. You'll probably see speeds not much slower than about 170 off the gas, what little you're off the gas here in the middle of the corner. So yeah, it's forgiving, it's wide, it's sweeping with a lot of options, but it's fast, and there's only 18 degrees of banking. The law of physics almost takes over when you go down in the corner that fast.
Yeah, you think you can run around here wide open, Steve? I don't recommend trying it.
That wing isn't near big enough.
Jimmie Johnson, fourth fastest for Chevrolets atop the leaderboard as Ryan Newman and his boss, Tony Stewart,
He's doing his homework. He's got his notebook.
Oh.
Sprint Cup practice continues at the Michigan International Speedway. Two-time MIS winner Ryan Newman just finished his debrief with his teammate and boss, Tony Stewart. Newman's biggest complaint, the car free, the same as Stewart. They're now swapping over the 39 car setup to qualifying setup. The biggest issue that Newman fought, he said he felt like the car just wasn't stable enough on entry, too free. Tony Gibson already laid out the agenda for the next round here in this final practice on Friday before qualifying, where Newman also has a pole here at MIS.
Well, our fellow speed announcers, they are watching our practice show. I got a little text from Ray Dunlap, who does the truck series. Kyle Busch will complete the quadfecto, I guess you might call it. He's not going to race in the ARCA series, but he's going to spot for Brian Eichler, who also sometimes drives the truck for Billy Blue when Kyle Busch is not there. So Kyle Busch will be participating in the ARCA race to some capacity.
So he's going to be involved.
He will be involved.
Kind of like the chicken and egg, involved or committed. Kind of pig and whatever to them. Yeah, okay.
The chicken's involved, the pig is committed.
Yeah, that's it.
There's no turning back.
Three Chevrolets atop timing and scorings leaderboard here at Michigan International. Jeff Gordon 15th overall in his Chevrolet.
And, you know, they just reminded us he's won here twice, but when he really seems to be on his game is qualifying day. He has 5 poles at this 2-mile racetrack. But, you know, I want to go back to what Jeff and I were talking about early, and I mentioned 4 teams. The 4th team who's leading the points, Jeff Gordon, Jimmie Johnson, and Ryan Newman, the top 4 in points. What I meant by that, those guys really had nothing to lose last week by gambling. Yeah, they didn't want to come out of there with a 28th place finish because of running out of fuel. But right now, those guys with 12 races to go look like they're in pretty good shape to be in the top 12 in 12 races. So what's the most important thing? Trying to get those 10 bonus points for a win. Now, Carl Edwards, Bob Osborne, that's another story. Remember, he was just inside the top 12 last week. So I guess, not to take anything away from the gamble that those guys made, but I just didn't feel like it was a real gamble considering their status in the point situation.
Not a lot to lose.
Jeff Gordon to the garage, and we go there as well with Marty.
Matt Kenseth has 3 straight top 5s here at Michigan, Steve, and hoping to regain some of that momentum this weekend. The car that he's driving this weekend is the one that he won with at Fontana, so they know the car can get the job done. However, Matt, right now, a little bit tight. A host of changes here on the 17 car, trying to get it to free up a little bit. In fact, all the Roush cars seem to be a little bit tight, and usually when we come to Michigan, we can rely on those Roush cars being at the top of the board, but so far, not that great. Matt Kenseth is currently 19th on the chart, guys.
All right, thank you, Marty. Another guy looking to pick up some speed. That guy, Casey Kane, Richard Petty Motorsports, number 9 Dodge, just 35th fastest right now. Kane, a former winner here at MIS.
Well, I hope they're on one of those agendas that I was talking about early in the show. Maybe testing some things, maybe going through race trim. I get a feeling that they're probably in race trim because this is that new R6 engine package, the new Dodge engine package. This will only be the 2nd time that they've raced it this year. They raced it at Dover, and I just felt like when you look at his record here, 10 starts, 5 top 5 finishes, including the win, that this guy right here should and could be a sleeper this weekend here at Michigan. But they've got some work to do based on that practice sheet.
But you brought it up, Larry, about the testing aspect of it. As long as they're trying to figure their race car out, they still got plenty of time to get this car turned into a qualifying situation where they can probably make the car a little more comfortable. And I would expect it to be a lot faster whenever they come time for qualifying.
And Steve, what I was going to say, I love this 2009 season so far. We were talking on our conference call the other day. We've had 14 races with 9 different winners. And there just does not seem to be no clear-cut dominant force out there right now. Yeah, Kyle Busch has won 3 races. You go back a year ago, it was the 18 and the 99. You go back to 2007, it was the 24 and the 48. But there's just no clear-cut domination going on out there right so far this year.
Another Richard Petty Motorsports driver, Elliott Sadler, to the garage.
It's our buddy from trackside.
Yes, sir.
He'll be there tonight.
He was back in the saddle last weekend.
Yeah.
Had his pants rolled up to his knees.
Yeah, I think it was because of the rain.
It wasn't a fashion
I
statement?
don't think they were rolled
High
up.
waters.
I think that's how they work.
High waters. Here's a look at our advanced auto parts menu. NASCAR Live follows this 90-minute practice session, followed by practice for the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series teams. Qualifying for the Sprint Cup Series follows that trackside. Jeff Burton is with us. NASCAR performers. Well, what do you know?
Our producer told us he was going to do a promo as the audience built today.
NASCAR starts at 11:30. ARCA race also in there, sandwiched in the NASCAR coverage from 5 to 7 here on Speed. And Brian Eichler was fastest in practice.
Oh, okay. Saw Brian Patty, the crew chief for Juan Pablo Montoya this morning. I said, whoever said that you can't make lemonade out of lemons, because they absolutely were terrible at Pocono. He was one of the wave-by cars.
That's right.
They got back on the lead lap, they made their pit stop, and then they played the fuel strategy and probably took about a 25th place race car and turned it into a top 10.
It's unbelievable right there. She just, how you need to fight from time to time as far as that's concerned. And he just got through laying down a pretty good lap. I think they got a better race car than what they had last week. He's 3rd quickest after that little qualifying attempt there. So that should make things a little bit better in the 42 car garage. But you're right. You're exactly right. You take a look up there on top of the truck. Brian Patty there writing down some notes.
You know,
they were terrible last week. I mean, terrible.
Jeff, both of those Earnhardt Ganassi cars are 2-3 right now. Truex Jr.'s up there 2nd, so both of them pretty quick.
Look who's at the head of the class. The old man.
Right out of the truck.
Think of Mark Martin. I think about the old man in the seat. Tough as leather. Just keeps on going. You can't slow him down.
David Gilliland in the 71 car.
Now, if you notice, it has a black paint scheme on it. It doesn't have the normal TRG blue. There's a little bit of an R&D project going on here. They get their engines from Richard Childress Racing. But this car here is a complete, full-blown Richard Childress Racing car. I think when you look at Richard Childress Racing right now, obviously we've documented that there's some struggles going on over there across the board. And I think they just wanted to go outside of their house, send one of their cars over there to Slugger Labby and David Gilliland and say, look, see what you can do with it, see what you can learn. Obviously, whatever they learn, the information is going to go back. But I know that the 71 car, by lack of sponsorship, they've been a little bit of a start and park at times. But the good news is they're going to race all day Sunday. In fact, Slugger told me they're going to race all day the next 4 races.
Well, he'll be really good here, and I'm sure he'll be unbelievably good when we get ready to go to the road courses at Sonoma next week in Finion.
Jeff David Rudem is back on track. He's completed just 5 laps. Talked about that Michigan stripe he got early in practice. Just 35th overall right now. All 44 teams have been on the racetrack. Mark Martin still the quickest, still 4 Chevrolets leading the way. Mark Martin, Martin Truex Jr., Juan Pablo Montoya, and Clint Boyer. Robbie Gordon, the fastest Toyota. He is 5th overall.
Now we're getting a report from the garage area as we're approaching the halfway point of this 90-minute practice that a lot of teams are now starting to swap over to qualifying trim. We got the word that Jeff Burton, Scott Miller, the 31 team, they're swapping over. I think we'll see more and more of that happening over the next 10 to 15 minutes as we close into the second half of this practice session.
I think that's really that's the best way to do it too when you think about it, guys. ARCA practice earlier today. The Camping World Truck Center was out, the series was out there also, and they, 2 different types of rubbers on the racetrack. So you needed for the truck guys to run, you need to have these Sprint Cup cars run. The racetrack's changing. It's heating up, laying down rubber. So you get an idea kind of like what the race car feels like in a balanced situation. Then all of a sudden you put your qualifying package up underneath it. You got a little bit better opportunity to fine-tune your race car prior to qualifying.
Mentioned this will be the 80th NASCAR Sprint Cup Series race at Michigan International. 62 of those races have been won from a top 10 starting position. Mark Martin continues to pace practice here. We'll be right back.
Yep, buddy.
Thursday night, Wrecked is all new. O'Hare must tow a bridge across an icy pond, and disaster looms. The ice beneath begins to break. Don't miss an all-new episode of Wrecked, Life in the Crash Lane, Thursday night at 10 Eastern here on Speed. Let's go to the garage and Marty.
Well, Steve, Mark Martin getting ready to head back out there. As you guys have mentioned, the fastest guy out so far. And like all the Hendrick teams, Mark Martin will stay in qualifying trim for this entire session. It's kind of a company-wide thing that they do. I asked Alan Gustafson earlier, why do you do that? And he said because the track changes so much between today and tomorrow. So all the Hendrick teams staying in qualifying mode. Mark Martin will make one more qualifying run right now. Matt?
The Gregs, Irwin, and Biffle discussing what they've already learned so far in practice. Greg Biffle said he's really not happy where they are feel-wise with the race car. They made a shock change on the previous run. Didn't really seem to pick up exactly what he's looking for. 14th in this practice, but boy, when you look at the championship standings, the last 2 races, he's gained 3 spots. Last week, he moved up to 7th. They're starting to hit that portion of the summer where we're going to racetracks where Biffle and the Roush guys really run well.
Thank you very much, Matt. The 19 wins for Roush Fenway, and as you said, 2 wins for Biffle here at Michigan. As Mark Martin, a 4-time winner here at Michigan, heads back out onto the racetrack.
Yeah, and I believe if you'll check the record books right there, he got a lot of wins driving for a guy named Jack. Up here,
Yes,
Steve.
indeed.
Where all his wins came from. I know you'd like to change that this weekend, and I would not be one bit surprised if he was a factor coming into this race on Sunday.
I want to mention, too, Bill Elliott is the fastest Ford driver. I take that back. David Reagan just bumped Bill Elliott as the fastest Ford driver. Reagan now 5th overall. Elliott, a 7-time winner here, is now 10th fastest.
Now, you know, qualifying is 2 laps like it is every week, everywhere we go. I think especially the top 35, you're going to see them as hot as it is. They're probably only going to run that 1 lap. But with that said, you have a very high gear in the car, 375 gear. You have really got to get off pit road because this is a momentum racetrack, and Jeff and I document this week in and week out. Probably one of the most important pieces of that qualifying lap is through 3 and 4 coming to take the green. You want to make sure you're up to speed because if you run the 2nd lap, yeah, you'll have the speed, but you're going to really lose some grip in the tires.
I think you need to take it one step further too there. And when we talk about being a momentum racetrack, this thing, the way these cars are, what they weigh, and the horsepower to weight ratio, that's the reason why it's so important when we talk about the momentum. You've got to get that weight at 3,500 pounds as close to maximum velocity as quick as possible. And that's where the big difference is. You got a lot of horsepower, but you don't have a gear that allows you to do that. So when you run through that first corner, if you don't have that momentum going like he's talking about, it drags you. I mean, you lose it because of rolling resistance as well as wind drag, and it'll just kill you coming back to the start-finish line. So those guys will really be, I almost wish we had a clock, a way to time them going into turn 3 and what kind of speed they're carried in there. I think we'd learn a lot about guys who are really making good gains coming off of pit road.
Bobby Labonte slowing down on the backstretch. He is 12th overall in practice right now. We go back to Marty.
And guys, we were watching Casey Kane a moment ago. 38th right now. Is that cause for concern, or are you just running a little race trim?
Well, we were race trim, but when we went out, our Budweiser Dodge was on the track pretty hard. I was hitting the track, so it's probably 5-6 tenths at least, you know, right there, I would think. And after that, we felt pretty good. Got the front off the track, and it felt really racy right there. And you know, should be all right. Good starting spot for tomorrow in practice.
Exactly. Now for the last lap at Pocono, you had such a fast car at the end of the race there. What happened on that last lap?
Well, we had to pit for gas. And I was coming back through. Had a great car. I was coming back through, and I got under Hornish, and there's such a small spot in turn 4 or 3 there to go for that I was using it and he was using it, and we kind of touched, and I ended up spinning around. To me, it was really a racing deal. I haven't been able to see it at all, but I thought it was much a racing deal. I lost 3 or 4 spots, got it straightened out, and took off, and was lucky I didn't hit anything, because it 499 miles and then hit something would have been bad.
Exactly right. He had one of the 5 fastest cars or so at the end of the race. Told me it was a little disappointing on that last lap to lose 3 or 4 spots there. Steve?
Thank you very much, Marty. Mark Martin still the quickest. Brian Vickers has jumped up inside the top 5 along with Clint Boyer. We're 47 minutes in to a 90-minute practice. Stay with us. Jeff Gordon slowing down here at the Michigan International Speedway. Glad you're with us for practice, a 90-minute session for the Sprint Cup Series competitors. Now, a moment ago, we saw a little telltale smoke, perhaps, from Jeff Gordon's Chevrolet.
Yeah, he had shut it off just as he crossed the finish line. He's 17th quickest. He's run 5 laps. But Jeff and I were thinking he shut it off awfully quick. And Matt, is there a problem with this 24?
Absolutely, Larry Mack. He came on the radio and said it just blew up. Currently, Scott Maxim and John Smeltzer. Smeltzer is the engine tuner on the 24. They're conversing. The 24 crew is getting ready to get a position in the backside of the garage here across from their stall to be out of the way to take that engine out, but they are definitely going to have to make a motor change. And Larry Mack, you know what happens when you make a motor change?
You go to the rear.
You go to the back.
So the man's second in points, only 71 points behind Tony Stewart. No matter where he qualifies today, it'll be for pit selection only.
Russell just handed me a note.
Hey, I'm going to say, not another one of them notes from last week.
4 drivers have started from the rear.
Well,
and
he
won
just
in
might make it
2009.
Jeff Gordon would love to hand you a note that says 5.
That's exactly right.
There's John Smeltzer right there with the tool car.
I think that only works when we say that on Saturday.
Yeah, I
though.
think you're right.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
Have to be careful with this pattern or trend we're seeing here.
Well, 41 drivers have run a sub 40-second lap. 8 drivers under 39 seconds. Stay with us. We'll come back and have more practice from Michigan right after this. Speed into Father's Day at Infineon Raceway in Sonoma for the Toyota Save Mart 350. Visit the speed stage all weekend and sign up to win the ultimate Father's Day race day package. You could win the chance to watch the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series race from the pits and much, much more. Just go to speedtv.com, keyword promo for more information.
You know, when you read that promo, I don't know that we have ever spent Father's Day out at Infineon. It's always normally
here.
right here, or it has been Pocono, one of those 2 racetracks that we always are there on Father's Day weekend.
We've been up here for how many years?
I don't think we've
Father's Day
ever been out at
because-
Infineon on
No,
Father's Day.
we've never done that, in best of my recollection, because, and I'll tell you why, I mean, I used to always get up here on race morning, get things started, probably around 9 o'clock. I'd go over, there was a pay phone inside the garage area, and I'd pick up the phone and call my dad and wish him happy Father's Day, and I did that for many, 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 many years. And I miss him very much, but this was always a special time. We'd just call him in there and say, hey, man, I was thinking about you.
We're under caution. Jeff Gordon lost an engine. He's standing by with Matt.
He's already debriefed with crew chief Steve Letard and talking to the engine guys. First, what do you think broke inside the motor?
There's no telling. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the oil pump belt fell off. It happened in a hurry, and there was no sign of anything. And I was so focused on the lap because we're making a qualifying run there. But when I coasted back around, I saw the oil pump belt sitting down there in the groove. So I called back to him. I told him I'm pretty sure that's what it was. So it's unfortunate that happened. We'll try to figure out why it happened, make sure that there's not a problem, and go back and diagnose the issue. put another engine in there. I got a lot of confidence in the Hendrick engine program and putting another engine in there. I was really more concerned with the way the car, was handling. We weren't very fast. We were making qualifying runs, and that was a big gain as far as the way the car felt there. Unfortunately, the engine went.
All right, thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you.
Just want to explain one thing to everybody at home. I'm sure somebody's going to say, well, if the belt just fell off, why don't you just put it back on and we'll go on? I mean, it should be fine. But that's not the case. These things are what they call a dry sump system. It's not like your normal passenger car. So whenever that belt comes off, the oil pump stops moving oil from the engine back to the tank, to the coolers and everything, and it starves the bearings. And that's what creates the engine failure. And like Jeff said, in 40-some seconds or less than 2 minutes, you can fry an engine. That's how quickly. As soon as you starve these engines from oil, the damage is done. Move on to the next deal. So that's what happened.
And it may have not been that the belt just fell off because it was not put on properly. If the oil pump locked up,
yeah,
that can sling the belt. So, you know, we won't know, and they won't know probably till they get this engine tore apart.
You know, Larry, as we take a look at these guys ready to change the engine here, take a look at this toolbox right here. All of these shocks that are laid over here, these are shocks that probably go to the front or the rear of the car. And if you look at any of the garage spaces, you will see a multitude of those little apparatuses. I mean, they change them. I mean, they've got sets of them. I mean, during the course of the week, Larry, help me out here. There's some shock builders that'll build as many as 10 to 15 sets. I'm talking about sets of 4 shocks, Steve, with different bump stops, different springs, I mean, different valving, shims, all kinds of different things, just so when you get up here and the driver comes and says, this thing feels like it's riding like a buckboard. Okay, fine. I've got a set over here that will ride smoother. Put those on. That's the right direction. Need to go a little bit more. They don't have to run back to the shop. They've anticipated what they may need so they can change it quickly during these practice sessions and get what they need just right. And if they don't have it during the break, they'll rebuild something.
You know, the amazing thing that I saw, that pit car to Martin Truex Jr., it's bigger than the first truck I worked out of in 1979.
We'll be right back to Michigan. Still under caution for Jeff Gordon's blown motor. Stay with us. Still under caution here at Michigan International Speedway for Jeff Gordon's blown motor. Track officials making sure that no fluid on the racetrack. We're 58 minutes into a 90-minute practice. Mark Martin still has the fastest lap on this 2-mile super speedway. Martin Truex Jr. is second quick. Marty has an update on that one car.
Yeah, guys, talked to him moments before he climbed into the car. They've only made that one run for 3 laps. He said it was terrific on that one run, and they've decided to stay in qualifying trim for this entire session. He said, you know what, one, they think the track's going to change tomorrow, but 2, they feel like they have such a good baseline for it. This has always been a very good Martin Truex Jr. track. He's finished second here twice. They feel like they have such a good baseline setup that they can make notes from tomorrow and then kind of start from there and then go from that point. So they're going to stay in qualifying trim. At least that's the plan as of now. And as we sit here under yellow, now the green flag comes out. I'm being told on my radio. As we sit here under yellow, losing time, more likely that they will stay in qualifying trim this entire session, Steve.
Steve, they're starting to make a little bit of noise with this one car. And I think what's happened, and we talked about this a lot in the first 10 or 12 races, the merger between DEI and Ganassi came together so late in the game that they really just spent all their winter just putting everything in one building. But this is the car right here that they ran at Las Vegas. But since they ran it at Las Vegas, it's now had the time to have the Ganassi front clip and front rear clip put on it. So now he's racing chassis like his teammate Juan Pablo Montoya, which obviously they can share information. When one's got one chassis and one's got the other, there's no way to share information.
But Larry, I think we got to take it one step further. What's the difference? I mean, because you got the same bodies. You know, what is the problem right here as far as, you know, what's off on it? It's the pivot points. The guys move the different pivot points, whether it's a rear pivot point or if it's an upper control arm, lower control arm, different spindle setups. And sometimes it can be something, this is minute, Steve, as a 1/4 inch difference between you and your teammate, and his car will drive like a Cadillac and yours will drive like, well, a dump truck. So, I mean, and that's what it's all about. And we're such a close competition nowadays. It doesn't take but just a couple tenths, and you feel like all of a sudden you cannot do your job properly. And it's great to see him get this one car turned around. Mark Truex is a great driver, and we know what Bono can do when these guys are on. They can be the guys that have to beat on Sunday. So with Juan Pablo being as fast as he is, and the one car, Truex as quick as they are right now, they've got to be considered serious threats this weekend.
Well, Jeff, you talk about the competition. As I said, we have 37, 38 cars that have run a 38-second lap.
Well, and that's a closeness of everything. And I want to commend Jeff Burton. I heard him doing an interview today, and they were talking about the fact that go back and look at competition. Everybody talks about how good racing used to be. Well, right now, he believes racing is as good as it's ever been. He said, I challenge anybody to go back and look at that. You'll see what I'm talking about. The closest of competition. Everybody wants side-by-side racing, but sometimes you can't get it. Here's a guy right now that's looking to repeat what he did here a year ago, guys, and he made a pretty good statement just a moment ago. 6th quickest after a qualifying run for the 88 of Dale Earnhardt Jr.
But it's changing fast. He was 5th quickest, and then Clint Boyer went out there and laid a lap down. That bumped the 88 car of Dale Earnhardt Jr. back to 6th. Marty, I know it's early in the weekend, but things are looking up now.
Positive things, Larry Mack. They are staying in qualifying trim the entire time. Loose on the first run, tight on the second run. This was the 3rd run, and Junior hit it right down the middle. It was exactly what they wanted. Now they're going to work from here. I did talk to Lance Bergrew about last week's race at Pocono. He said they found a problem with the car when they got it back to the shop. He described the problem to me as, quote, very fixable and something that should not happen again. So that was a problem with Junior's car last week. He said considering that problem, he actually thought they ran pretty well.
Well, this may be the first full-blown normal weekend that Lance McGrew and Dale Earnhardt Jr. get an opportunity to work together. We know they only worked together essentially on Sunday at Dover. Last week we had all the weather. They were forced to start where they were in points. This could be the first weekend that you can say, okay, now they've got the full opportunity. Practice, qualify, practice, race.
Jamie McMurray, 27th overall. As Larry said, though, the names are moving quickly. David Stremme just jumped up into the top 10. Kurt Busch, Scott Speed as well inside the top 10.
Well, you're going to see a lot of that over the next little bit. These guys are starting to put down their qualifying attempts, and everybody's jumping around right now. Jamie McMurray jumps all the way up to 11th in that 26 car, so that should put a smile on Jack Roush's face.
Yeah, because he becomes the fastest Ford. His teammate David Reagan right now is right behind him, 12th.
Taking a look at Reed Sorensen, number 43. Now he's 32nd overall. Let's see if he lays down a qualifying lap.
You know, in his last 7 races, he finished 20th at Pocono last week. He's actually had 6 top 20 finishes, and you may say, well, top 20, that's not very good. I'm telling you, it's hard to run in the top 15 or 20 of this Sprint Cup Series schedule right now. It's just, the competition is just so tough.
13th quickest right now for that 43.
Bobby Labonte aboard the Ask.com Ford for Yates Racing.
Bobby's got 4 poles here and 3 wins, all driving for Joe Gibbs Racing, that number 18 car.
Got about 25 minutes left in this practice. Mentioned Bill Elliott briefly. 7 times he's been to victory lane here at MIS.
Yeah, second only to the legendary David Pearson with all-time wins here. Pearson's got 9.
Cale Yarborough has 8.
That's right, 3rd. I'm sorry about that, 3rd. Forgot about Cale. Cale won the first race here back in 1969 after Donnie Allison sat on the pole.
So if you do the numbers, Jeff mentioned earlier, this is the 80th race here at Michigan. Bill Elliott has 7 wins. This number 21 car, the Wood Brothers, they have 11 wins. That's 18 wins combined of those 79 races we've run here. Pretty stout numbers.
Dale Jarrett got his first Cup win here in that car in Michigan.
Oh, I remember distinctly.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry about that.
Oops.
We were a very close second with Davey Allison.
You know what, Larry, you're always a part of a good story. You know that? But just on the losing end of
my
it.
strategy right, I think.
The clock is winding down on Sprint Cup Series practice here at the Michigan International Speedway. Kurt Busch, 2-time winner here at MIS back in 2003 and 2007. the car up on scales, currently 10th fastest in this practice. Really his past 3 weeks, more like a heart monitor, with finishes 34th, 5th, and 37th. Pleased so far what they've seen with this Blue Deuce in this practice session. Said the car a little tight at the apex in the center of the corner, and when he goes to get back in the gas on the throttle, just a tick free. Some slight changes up in the front with Jeff Thousand, one of the longtime crew members on this 2 car. But this team pretty pleased, looking for something he's never done here at MIS, Marty Snyder, and that's win the pole.
Well, Matt Clint Boyer currently is second right now. He is very happy with this race car in race trim, as well as the one qualifying run that he made. They will make another one here in about 10 minutes or so. He is being told on the radio by Shane Wilson, his crew chief. And you talk about all the work that has gone in at RCR. This team struggled early in the year. Last few weeks it's been much better. This is a car that actually raced before, but it has a brand new front clip and a brand new rear clip, so they consider it basically a brand new race car, and Clint loves it. He's first lap on the track said this race car feels like a new one. Was it a new car? They said no, you've actually raced this one before, but tons of changes to it. A lot of work going in at RCR trying to make this team get a little bit better.
And Marty, I'm glad you're pointing that out, because that was the one thing we were talking about one time before with Richard Childers Racing, is they were trying some new things early this season, and some of the things were working, but a lot of the things weren't. And you know, they've been going through, once again, trying to sort it out and get their cars back on track, and it's just great to see them finally get it working the right direction right now. And Boyer up there being second quickest. And here's a guy that's kind of surprised me today. Robbie Gordon, I mean, here he is, been flirting up there in the top 10 all day long with a pretty fast race car.
Right now he's 14th overall.
38.81. Yeah, he just jumped up there, and you know, we talk about Kyle Busch being a busy man. How about this cat here? He doesn't just go back and forth between Nationwide Series tracks and Spring Cup Series tracks. Last Saturday, the Saturday of Pocono, of course, Travis Quapple was up there in Pocono practicing his car, but he won. Robbie won his 4th overall race in the Baja 500, and in the 3 races this year, Robbie and that team, they have won 2, finished second in the 3rd one, and they're actually leading the points in that Desert Score Series.
He's a racer through and through.
Hey, he doesn't change series, he changes countries.
And sometimes he'll race through countries.
This guy here just jumped up to second quickest, Juan Pablo Montoya.
Jeff Burton will be with us on trackside tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. There he is in his Caterpillar Chevrolet. You heard Marty talking about the RCR cars. Burton right now 25th overall, but see if he lays down a quick lap.
You know, Jeff talked about the very first race here back in June of '69 when it was Cale Yarborough. With all the top 10 finishes that Richard Childress Racing has at this 2-mile racetrack, actually Richard Childress himself as a driver. I don't think a lot of people remember Richard Childress starting his career driving race cars. He actually has 2 top 10 finishes here, one in June of '78 and another in August of 1979 as a driver.
Don't ever sell Richard Childress short. If he had the money, he could have got the job done. He had good equipment, and he ran smart, and I think that's where he really honed his business skills of being able to manage that race team back when he had the number 3 CRC chemicals, and he also had like a black gold Molly lubricant car. I mean, he had always had good looking equipment, and he always made a good effort. Started out, I think, originally with the number 96 on the side of his car,
right, yeah.
And then went to the number 3.
You know, Jeff Burton's a big Duke basketball fan, and just found out that Shane Battier, who played at Duke, now for the Houston Rockets in the NBA, will be here on Sunday. Hanging out with Jeff.
That's great.
Yep. The Magic choked last night. All they had to do was make free throws.
Well, the thing I was getting ready to say, you bring up that, I think about J.J. Reddick, you know, who used to play at Duke, you know.
Marcos Ambrose right now out there in that 47 car. He's 25th quickest, had a great run at Pocono. And I know people say, wait a minute, he had a good finish. He finished 6th, but they had a top 15 race car all day long, and we know he's licking his chops about next week out there at Infinity.
I was going to say, if you play fantasy NASCAR racing, load the wagon on Marcus Ambrose.
He should be a threat out there for sure. Can you believe it, guys? They've run all 14 races this year.
Pretty good, still loose. Just off the wall, and it's turning real good to the middle. Can't get loose.
He's all fizzed up.
All fizzed up, currently 11th, but I was going to say, we watch him here, get just a little bit squirrely right there. You see the car wiggle just a little bit. He said he gets out close to the wall, and he said I get a little bit loose.
The back is not in the racetrack.
No, it's not happy right at the moment. So I'm sure they'll do a little bit of work to it. But 14 races, and as good as they've run this year, he, along with A.J. Allmendinger, haven't let a lap all year long. So I expect if it doesn't change this weekend, I expect to see it change next weekend.
You know what's amazing about that lap that we just watched, where you could see how loose it was, he still jumped up to 11th quickest. So Frankie Kerr and that group get this car tightened up just a little bit. And I think this is one of the racetracks, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, forever, if the driver said I'm a little loose in practice, you better make sure and tighten it up, because it's probably only going to get looser when we go to qualify.
And he's got a good draw for qualifying the 11 car. I mean, with the 11 car and a couple other guys like that in the 47. But it'd be interesting to see right now how this is going to play out. But look at Scott Speed. He's currently 14th quickest.
Oh, David Stremme just jumped up to the top of the leaderboard. It shows Jimmy Johnson, but the names are fast and furious. Ha! Sunday on Speed, NASCAR race day marches into Michigan before the action heats up on the track. Be there as Tony Stewart and Ryan Newman discuss the phenomenal first season of Stewart Haas Racing. NASCAR race day built by the Home Depot. That's live Sunday coverage beginning at 10:30 Eastern. We saw Carl Edwards heading to the garage area in the 99 car. As we take a look at the aforementioned Mr. Newman.
Currently 10th quickest, but I'm going to go back to the 99 right quick, which we know he's going to the garage area. And he looks to me like he has either got to be in race trim, or otherwise that number 99 is struggling. He's 33rd quickest, but he has run 25 laps. He, along with Matt Kenseth, have got some of the most laps run so far today with 21 and 25. So
1 and 1 on the track bar. And for 1 and 1 on the track bar. Half and 1 wins.
So they're going to make an adjustment to that, what we call the rear panhard bar, track bar in the back of the car.
Now, I'm not saying you don't, but you don't hear that a lot from drivers nowadays telling you what to do to the car exactly. They tell you what the symptoms are. His time, he told them what I want you to do to it.
And he was very confident with that information.
And that's an engineer driver right there for you right there. He knows what he's looking for, how he wants to get it fixed.
David Reagan from Roush Fenway Racing, 19th overall.
You know, we're closing in on the final 10 or 12 minutes of this practice session. I need to go back and correct something as we watch David Reagan. We're getting the information that Robbie Gordon in that Baja 500, that he was penalized and was actually moved back to 7th place in the finishing order of that race. So he did not win the Baja 500.
Down to the garage and Marty.
Yeah, Steve, Brian Vickers and Ryan Pemberton just finished their final debrief before they make this last run in qualifying trim. Remember, Vickers was on the pole here last August, very happy with the car. He said it's a little too tight, especially in 1 and 2, and that last change they made got about 40% of what he wanted. So they're trying to make this final change, trying to get him on the pole for the second straight Michigan race. Michigan always has been very good to the North Carolina native, with 3 straight top 10 finishes here. So Brian, a little extra focus this weekend. Knows he can run well at this racetrack, Steve.
Thank you, Marty. You see Ryan Pemberton helping call the shots down on the race cars. We watch Casey Kane in the 9 car. He is 15th overall. Clint Boyer has just jumped to the top of the chart, bumping David Stremme.
I don't know if we mentioned Denny Hamlin jumped up there to 3rd in that 11 car. This should be a qualifying run for this 9 car here. Let's see what he can do. Quite a bit slower than his fastest lap of 38.78. That right there was a 39.17 by the 9.
39.15. 39.15.
Yeah, David Stremme by far the fastest Dodge. In fact, the second quickest Dodge is Casey Kane, this 9 car.
Free in. A little bit loose in, a little bit loose off, but not.
Greg Biffle, 5th overall. You've heard us say several times in this practice, he's a 2-time winner here. And, you know, Jeff, Larry, we saw David Reagan a minute ago, a teammate to Greg Biffle, and kind of curious. It's just been a disappointing season for David. He's 31st in points. They just don't have many good finishes to show for themselves.
I think coming off of, last year, I think everybody really expected a huge turnaround. It was just a matter of just a few races. You see this guy jumping up into victory lane, and it hadn't happened. I mean, some of it's been bad luck, but they really haven't been on this year. And I'm talking about Roush Fenway across the board. And, the 6 car is really been the one that struggled the most. I mean, currently you've got the 99, the 17, and the 16, basically 6th, 7th, and 8th in points.
Yeah.
So they've been hanging in there getting salvaging or making good finishes, just like last week finishing 2nd. So a lot of work right there to be done by the 6 as well as the 26 to kind of get caught up. But it's going to be interesting, really, Steve, how this is going to work out for him. I know he's frustrated. I did see him in the garage. He said, I'm staying here this weekend, focusing on the Cup event as we're watching Dale Earnhardt Jr. make a qualifying attempt here in the 88 car. He's currently 13th.
Yeah, like all of his teammates, looks like he's been in qualifying trim about the whole practice. He's only run 6 laps total.
Now, I believe it was Marty was talking about, first he was a little loose, he was a little tight. Last time out, they thought they got it just about right. So I'm sure they're going to kind of like throw the kitchen sink at it. Be up to him to see what he can get out of the race car.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. has 4 Nationwide Series starts here. He's never finished worse than 7th. Actually has 2 wins in the Nationwide Series at Michigan.
Junior shuts it down, does not pick up 13th overall in his Chevrolet. Clint Boyer is the quickest. He's followed by David Strimmy in a Dodge, Denny Hamlin in a Toyota. Got a Ford in the top 5 as well. That belongs to Greg Biffle. Final moments of this Sprint Cup Series practice at the Michigan International Speedway. Michael Waltrip, 29th overall in his Napa Auto Parts Toyota. Let's go to Matt.
Bill Elliott trying to beat the clock. A few minutes left of the session. Mr. Hardman's torquing the lugs and just put on a set of sticker brand new Goodyear tires in the 21. They went back on a spring. Bill didn't like the feel of the last run. It just wasn't secure enough on entry. When you look at the Wood brothers, Larry Mack and Jeff, we talked about it all year long. Going back to a part-time schedule like they used to run up until the middle 80s when Kyle Petty came on board, and then they started running for the championship. They've gone back. It's allowed them to refine things, polish their pieces even more. They're turning out some of the best race cars this year with the Motorcraft colors that you've seen from the Wood brothers in quite some time. And Eddie Wood says their next race, mark it down, Chicago, after this weekend here at Michigan.
Definitely, I think a lot better off running a limited schedule. You go there so much better prepared. As we watch Scott Speed in the 82 car go after a run here. Scott, of course, has to qualify on time. We have 44 cars here for 43 spots. Just outside the top 35 is this 82 car. He's 20th quickest right now.
His teammate Brian Vickers is now the quickest. Vickers ran a 38.17. That is the only driver to crack 188 miles per hour.
This is attempted to be Scott's first Sprint Cup Series start here at Michigan, but he did run the ARCA race in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series race here last year. Actually led a bunch of laps and finished 3rd in that truck race.
Nice pickup by Sam Hornish Jr. Jeff, he is 9th overall.
All these guys will just keep finding the speed. I mean, this was one of those kind of racetracks. If you get your car comfortable, the driver can really gain a lot. And already, Brian Vickers thought, man, I had a good run. Jimmy Johnson just trumped that.
Yep.
The 38.13. Again, the second driver to wind up into the 188 mile an hour bracket. He almost gets to 189 miles an hour.
Boy, it's changing fast and furious now. Kurt Busch just jumped up to 3rd. Juan Pablo Montoya is 4th. Martin Truex Jr., you're watching him right now. He is 12th overall.
We just saw Sam Hornish Jr. in that 77 car make a practice run. Right now, Sam is 11th quickest, the 3rd quickest Dodge. This is kind of a home game for Sam Hornish Jr. Not too far down the road to Defiance, Ohio.
You've been there.
I have been there. You've been there.
I've been there.
I've not been there.
You need to go.
No.
Your life will never be the same.
I've nothing against Sam, but I heard you guys almost got in trouble there.
No.
No.
You know what the whole problem is? We had a fun time. We always kind of pick at each other about it, but really they put on a great racing event over there. They got a lot of race fans over there. Rusty Wallace has been there. I think Kenny Wallace has been there. Larry's been there. I've been there. Sam was, he spends, drops by a lot of times when the party's going on. It's just a good time. It's a bunch of good race fans.
It wasn't the event. It was the Moose Lodge after the event.
The old Moose Lodge trick. Oh, back to Marty.
Yeah, I think it's time to break up the Defiance Ohio talk, guys. Let's talk to the fastest man out there, Brian Vickers. So how was the car? You said you needed 40% more. Did you get what you wanted?
Yeah, I think they got all 40%. The last change, the car was a little too loose to start with in qualifying trim. And with the first notch we took out of it, we only got about half of it. We needed a good 40-50% more, and they got it. The car's really good right now. I guess the rest is up to me.
All right, that will be a qualifying lap coming up here shortly. And as we said, the pole last August. We'll see if we can pull off 2 straight here at Michigan.
I guess the rest of it's up to the driver. That makes me nervous, Larry.
Would make me a little bit edgy.
David Rudiman started this practice scraping the wall. He is now 18th overall of 44 drivers.
Steve, I mentioned earlier about 14 different winners or 14 races and 9 different winners this year in 2009. And you just think about the drivers that's not won. Carl Edwards, Greg Biffle, Casey Kane, Denny Hamlin, Dale Earnhardt Jr., none of the Richard Childress cars. But yet we still have 9 different winners in 14 races. And when you look at the spring race here, this is what's interesting. 14 spring races and 14 different winners. You've got to go all the way back to the mid-90s before you find someone that won more than one time in that 14-year period. Rusty Wallace did it back in the mid-90s.
Max Pappas aboard the 13 car. It's 40th overall right now. 1 minute left in this practice. Jimmy Johnson is the quickest. You just heard from Brian Vickers. He's 2nd overall.
Guys, from what I can tell, Max is one of the guys that, did he do what I thought he did?
I think he did. Almost got a stripe.
Almost. But it's going to be a dogfight who winds up making this race and who winds up going home. We're only going to have one car get knocked out later on this afternoon. And this is one of the guys we're talking about. And he used up every bit of that number 2 corner right there coming off, headed down the back straightaway. Oof. I believe he gently scraped the wall.
There was no more real estate left there. If he didn't scrape it, he missed a great chance. But you're right, Jeff, when you look at from 34th or 35th to 44th, there's 7 of our go homers in that group back there. I think the biggest story of this practice session, Jeff Gordon out there on a practice qualifying run, about his 3rd time out, loses an engine. They're going to have to change that engine. He'll qualify a little bit later on. But no matter what, as this practice comes to a close, Jeff Gordon will have to start this 400-mile race from the rear.
We saw Michael Waltrip briefly. He confirmed that Patrick Carpentier will be in that car at Infineon and again at Watkins Glen. Let's go to Matt.
Steve, night and day is the way to describe the last 2 runs for Dale Earnhardt Jr. The previous run, he said it pushed like a truck, real bad tight. They changed tires, didn't really make too many adjustments, went back out and said the car felt great. He ended this practice 21st on the board, but they're pretty confident about what they have going into Sunday.
All right, thank you very much, Matt. Dale Earnhardt Jr. tries to get into the win column for the first time in 2009. Let's take a look at who the quickest drivers were in this 90-minute session.
Mentioned him a while ago, David Stremme in that 12 car with his teammate Kurt Busch, both of them up there in the top 5 or 6.
I believe you're going to come back and start looking at the fact that where did you draw for qualifying will have a big impact on how you qualify here. It's always been a luck of the draw. If you go out early, you usually run pretty slow. You go out later, you pick up speed.
And I think if you try to step it up just a little bit, it may step out on you. To what I saw in that practice session there with these guys making these practice qualifying runs. I think you'll see here that Mike Skinner will be the slowest of the 44 cars, and he's one of those cars that will have to qualify on time.
Qualifying a little bit after 3 Eastern here on Speed. Just a little bit, we'll be sending it to John Roberts. After NASCAR Live, you'll see the Camping World Truck Series teams practice. Mark Martin, a four-time winner here, still looking for more speed. Coming up, John Roberts. Stay with us here all afternoon.